Joining us now, Congressman Morgan Griffith, 9th District, Virginia. Congressman, great to have you, sir.
Good to be with you. I apologize if you can hear any road noise. I'm headed towards D.C. myself as we speak.
You're coming up here to not exactly God's country, but actually things have calmed down a little bit, and some of the graffiti is gone. So that's pretty good. A couple of weeks ago, when I came in, I could smell the burning of the fires that were still smoldering. I guess that was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Now it's a little bit better. Congressman, a lot to talk about today. I really don't know where to start, so I'll start with schools. The president yesterday having a summit at the White House demanding that these governors reopen schools, basically also saying that the majority of the cases that we're getting are harmless. I happen to agree with him. I mean, the left-wing media has been all over him saying, oh, this is a false statement. I mean, you look at, I think he's pretty accurate. Like 98% of people that get this virus, I mean, it has no impact on them other than a runny nose, or you might be sick for 2 days like you had the common flu. But the Democrats don't want these schools open. They don't want back-to-school spending. They don't want high school football in rural areas. They don't want parents to go back to work. Why can't we open the schools?
Well, I think we can. And, many of the schools in my part of the state are already making plans to do so. And in fairness to the governor, he revised his school requirements or recommendations the other day and made it so that students only have to be 3 feet apart. That makes it a little bit better.
Right.
But the bottom line is that, there are occasions where a young person gets a more serious form of the illness, but mostly it doesn't affect them. Now, each family has to make decisions. If you have school-age children who also live with an aged grandparent, that may cause some more issues, and we may have to take a look at that. But there's also a French study out that indicates that young students don't actually transmit it to older people. I'm not saying that that's definitive science, but there is at least one study that says that. So we have to keep an eye on it. But I think we can open the schools. I think it's absolutely imperative. The science says so. One of the 2 large pediatric associations of doctors in this country has called for the schools to open up. They say there's more harm to the students by not going to school than there is by having the schools opened up. I think that's true. Students don't learn as well. You have a young student in school. I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. They didn't learn very much in the spring. They went and dutifully did their classes online, but it's not the same. Teachers do have great value, and they add a tremendous amount, and it cannot all be done over the computer, and I think that's extremely important for people to remember. Also, the socialization, kids getting, familiar with other kids and figuring out how society should work and work together is extremely important for the future of our country. So, I mean, there are a lot of other issues here that I don't think some of the left media types are paying attention to.
When you talk about online learning, and many of your school children in your district had to go through this the last 3 months of the spring semester. But let me just ask you straight out, how many people in your district, I mean, what's the percentage of people that don't even have access to high-speed internet? We just had Drew Ferguson on, who said, look, I got 20% of the people in my district, they don't even have a cell phone, let alone high-speed internet access to be able to get any of this stuff done.
Well, they're a little higher on cell phone, but for high-speed internet where you can actually do the schoolwork, it is difficult for a large part of my district. As you know, it's mountainous, it's rural, and those parts of the district that are the most mountainous and most rural, in some cases people were having to take their kids to, the library parking lot to get Wi-Fi and do their homework and do their classwork. So it's not practical for them to get an education at all. And it's really surprising that the left seems to devalue education, which for years they've claimed was their bailiwick. It's not, but they've claimed that for years, and now here they are, in many cases, advocating that we not go back to school. Again, I do think the Northam administration has started to move in the right direction, so I don't want to throw them in with some of the liberal media or some of the other governors. They've actually moved in the right direction. I'd like to see them get a little bit closer to where I'd like to see them be, but they've let each school division make their own decisions, and they're only issuing guidelines, and those guidelines have gotten better in the last week or so. So hopefully we'll continue to see improvement in Virginia, and they'll modify them some more.
Well, I mean, look, you're supposed to look at the science and the data, and so there's no science and data that we're getting that says the school should be closed. There certainly isn't any science and data that says that online learning works. In fact, we've now got education professionals saying that the studies that were done with the distance learning in the spring were that up to 35% on any given day of students were not even logged in that day. So, I mean, that means that 1/3 of the entire student body is not even logged in, let alone doing anything. Just log in and leave. They haven't even done that. So, look, this thing doesn't work, Congressman. There's no question about it. We need to get kids educated. But isn't it amazing, like you mentioned, the Democrats always pro-education. Now, all of a sudden, they're not because they politicize it. My theory is if kids don't go back to school, mom, in a lot of households, mom and or dad can't go back to work. That hurts the economy. If they don't go back to school, you don't need school supplies, so you don't spend any money on it. That hurts the economy. If you don't go back to school, you have no high school athletics, no high school football. You know how big that is in the 9th District on Friday night. A lot of these areas that you represent, and you know that you go to Salem High School on a Friday night, you got 15,000 people there. I mean, the thing is packed every single Friday night when Salem, a top contender, plays at home. It's where the community gets together. You take that out, people get depressed, kids can't get scholarships, and yet here we are fighting a battle to just have our kids go back to school. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's fairly amazing. And nationally, it's something that we have to be focused on. And in fact, part of what I'm doing in D.C. is to have a discussion about that with some of my friends in the Freedom Caucus and continue this push to make sure that we're using sound science. And look, when you talk about this, the experts were in front of the committee that I serve on, Energy and Commerce, and, Fauci and Redfield both said, yeah, the kids have to go back to school. You have to use, proper measures and so forth and do cleaning, but they said it's very important the kids go back to school. So this was long before Trump said anything. The science people, the medical doctors, the pediatricians have all come out and said, yeah, the kids have got to go back to school. Where's the left-wing media claiming that there's science that says the opposite, that the kids shouldn't go back to school, when all of the experts that I've heard from have said, yeah, you have to be cautious, but you got to send the kids back to school.
Because it doesn't fit their narrative, Congressman. I mean, look, we just have to stop playing games here, right? Science and data to the Democrats only matter if it fits their narrative and it fits their overall strategy, which is to gain power and beat Trump. If it fits what they're doing, all of a sudden they pull out the science and data. When it disputes what they're doing, they go to the mainstream legacy fake news media who's basically their football offensive line. They go to them, they bury it, and they make something else. Now they're saying today in Florida they're running out of ICU beds. That is absolutely false, right? The governor's already said he has an 80% capacity for COVID patients that need ICU. 80% anywhere in the state. Only 20% are being utilized. But the Washington Post says, oh my God, they're running out of ICU beds. They take one hospital that is running short on them, and the overwhelming majority have nothing to do with COVID-19. So they lie to you in the media in order to create the fear. And of course, what they're doing in Florida is because we're going to a convention there, right? So they want to screw that up. I mean, when do we take the gloves off and say we just deal with the Democrats, not with just lie after lie after lie? Because that's just not true. The average age in Florida of people getting this is 35 years old. That's why DeSantis said 99% of the people that get this in Florida, they have no symptoms. I mean, these are the facts, but the fake news media tells you something else.
Yeah, there's a lot of fake news out there, and one of the ones I've been harping on lately is, how they always attack the president for not wearing a mask.
Right.
And they claim that he's not following the guidelines. The president at these various events that he goes to, and I was there at the White House on the 4th to hear his speech, and the president doesn't wear a mask, but he stays more than 6 feet away from everybody else, and he's given up wading into the crowd and shaking hands and so forth, and that's something he loves to do, but he's avoiding that, and he is following the CDC guidelines, because there's two things you can do. You can wear a mask or you can stay away from people. And he stays away from people, and the Secret Service are instructed, even if you're a congressman, you don't get closer than, about 7 feet to the president, because he's following the guidelines. But, you'll never hear that in the media. They'll never say, well, the president showed up without a mask, but he stayed away from everybody. He stayed higher than everybody. He wasn't in the place where, anybody could spread the virus to him or him to somebody else. You'll never hear that in the mainstream media, and it really is frustrating, because that's a huge issue of fake news. And if you could count on the media to give you the straight scoop, then you could say, they could be a fair umpire and call those balls and strikes, but they don't. For the president, everything is a strike, and it's unfortunate that we no longer have a media that we can rely on, which is why media sources like yours have grown in popularity over the years, because people want to get the real news.
Congressman, you've been in the district talking to voters. How does the Trump campaign turn the corner and win this election, sir?
Well, he's very popular in my district, as you know.
Right.
I do think he has to continue to talk about, how far left the Democrat Party has gone. He needs to, look, when you have the American flag said that it has to be taken down at the Virginia Capitol because it might incite some sort of violence, we got a problem in this country, and that's your Democrat Party of today. Look, there's a lot of good people out there who are affiliated with the Democrat Party and have been over the years, but they're no longer in control. Who's in control? AOC and the far left is in control of the Democrat Party, and they will run Joe Biden. He's always been to the left, but he will be dictated, his administration, if he were to be elected. I don't think he will be, but his administration would be dictated to by the likes of AOC. She's liable to be your EPA administrator. And start trying to get rid of cows. That was part of her proposal. But, this is how far left they've gone. It's absolutely ridiculous. And anybody who loves the American Republic should realize that there's a real threat to letting that far left get control of our country.
You saw the bill that was introduced yesterday by the squad, the I Can't Breathe bill, or whatever they're calling it. So you got 4 elected officials serving in your House of Representatives that want to eliminate policing in the United States, defund all the police federally, no more money for cops. They would take that money, divert it to something else, and then they want reparations. I'm not sure how that would work. This is a real bill put forth by real elected officials. This isn't on CNN. This is like real House members introducing a bill to get rid of cops.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Look, I was a criminal defense attorney for years. There are a few bad police officers. We need more measures and ability to get rid of the bad police officers. But the vast majority of police officers that I worked with were good men and women who were trying to do a job to protect their communities, and to say we're going to get rid of our policing, it's absolutely ridiculous. But it's just another of the many things that are abhorrent to the people in the 9th District, and I think really to the base of people in Virginia. No matter what political party they may have identified with before, they're like, hey, wait a minute, I like my police being there. I like to be able to call them if there's somebody, who's prowling around the outside of my house. I like to know that our police officers are there doing their job, and, and I think we do need some measures to be able to go after bad cops, and I think bad cops ought to be prosecuted. But getting rid of them, okay, people, let's not go down that path that's just ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It's outrageous. But they believe it. And if they get control of both houses in the White House, both houses of Congress in the White House, you can see this kind of legislation actually passing in the United States. It's it's absurd at best.
If the Democrats get control of the House, keep control of the House, get control of the Senate, and Biden wins, all this stuff is going to pass because the complete Democratic Party is now a hostage to these radicals that want no police, bankrupt the country. It doesn't matter what they want. They're all a hostage. Everybody's afraid of them, and they keep winning primaries. I mean, that's what you got to look at. When I've talked to people who said, "Oh, well, the Democrats are never going to really do this." Oh, yes, they are, because if they don't, they're going to get beat in the primaries, right? So,
right.
I mean, I'll give you an example that is obscure. Only Inside Baseball knows it. There's a liberal delegate in the House of Delegates in Georgia. His name is Virginia, Patrick Hope, right? You know him, nice guy, young, progressive, white guy in Northern Virginia, right? One of the most progressive guys there, but he's reasonable. He's not a bomb thrower. He's pro-business. He'll talk to people. He'll talk to the Chamber of Commerce, right? He's a reasonable guy. He's getting a primary challenge by a super progressive in 2021. Is already planned it, and the guy is the chief aide for David Marston. So that's the problem the Democrats have. I mean, here is a reliable Democrat progressive getting challenged by an AOC type, and he's got a campaign on his hands that he's going to have to spend money and try to win, and they're scared to death. So if they get power, they're going to have to do all this stuff that they're saying. I don't think it's a pipe dream for them at all, Congressman Griffith.
Yeah, I agree, and I served a short period of time with Patrick, and you're right. He's reasonable. He's far to my left, but he is a reasonable individual. But that's exactly what's happening. If he doesn't toe the line, they'll primary challenge him. And unfortunately, what we've seen in other areas of the country is they're taking out even people who are to the left. If they're at all reasonable in trying to preserve things like, we got to have some police officers, they take them out in primaries, and then your only candidate on the Democrat side in a Democrat district is somebody who's so far to the left that we would not have dreamed even 10 years ago that those folks would have a chance of winning a majority in the United States Congress. And today, they are at the gates and have a chance to take control. Democrats take control, and then they have a majority of the Democrats in the United States House. We'll see these bills on the floor. And if they get control of the Senate, the same thing will happen. And all of a sudden, you'll see a whole spate of crazy ideas coming to the floor and being voted on affirmatively. And if they have the White House, Joe Biden will sign every one of them.
He'll have to. Otherwise, he'll get a challenge if he decides to run again and wins in 2024, and they'll take him out. I mean, that's really what you have to look at. So you're spun on with that. I've only got 1 minute, but those of us that have railed against NAFTA like me for 30 years, finally it's gone. Big meeting at the White House today to get rid of NAFTA. We've got a new deal going. It's going to mean so many U.S. manufacturing jobs. What do you think about finally getting this done? It's taken a long time, Congressman.
Well, it's absolutely the right thing, and it was devastating to the 9th District of Virginia. Tens of thousands of jobs were lost in the 9th District, particularly in textiles, but other industries as well. I mean, when they have an announcement and 3,000 jobs goes away in a single day, you're in big trouble, and that's exactly what happened because of NAFTA.
Congressman, we're out of time. I really want to thank you for being with us today. Congressman Morgan Griffith, 9th District.